The Tome of the Abyss. The village had no name, at least, none that survived the whispers of time. It crouched like a forgotten relic on a desolate stretch of coast, where the cliffs crumbled into a blackened sea that churned with ceaseless malice. The fog was eternal, a thick, cloying veil that muffled sound and dulled the senses, wrapping the cluster of sagging huts and weathered stone walls in a perpetual twilight. The air reeked of salt and decay, and the wind carried a low, mournful wail that seemed to rise from the earth itself. I arrived there by chance, a weary scholar fleeing the clamor of city life, seeking solitude to mend a mind frayed by years of fruitless study. The villagers, gaunt and hollow-eyed, offered no welcome. Their gazes, when they met mine, were fleeting, darting nervously to the horizon as if awaiting some unseen calamity lurking beyond the waves. They spoke little, and when they did, it was in hushed fragments, as though afraid to stir the air. An old woman, her hands gnarled like driftwood, muttered of the deep ones and the weight of the stars, but her words dissolved into a cough as she shuffled away. The innkeeper, a stooped man with a face like cracked leather, handed me a key and warned me to stay clear of the cliffs. "Nothing good comes from poking at what's buried," he rasped, his eyes glinting with something between fear and resignation. I dismissed it as rural superstition, the kind born of isolation and endless winters. But the weight of their silence lingered, settling into my bones like damp rot. The ruins and the find. On the third day, restless and unable to shake the village's oppressive gloom, I ventured beyond its borders. The path wound through gnarled, leafless trees and over dunes of ashen sand, leading to a promontory where the cliffs jutted like broken teeth. There, half sunken into the earth, I found the ruins. They were no mere relic of human hands. Cyclopean slabs of stone, slick with an unidentifiable slime, rose in angles that defied geometry. The structure seemed to pulse with a subtle wrongness, its curves and edges bending in ways that made my eyes ache. Non-Euclidean, alien, it stood as a monument to something older than memory, its presence a violation of the natural order. The air hummed with a low, dissonant drone, and my breath caught in my throat, each inhale tinged with the faint, acrid scent of something long dead yet unervingly alive. I should have turned back. Every instinct screamed it. But curiosity, my eternal curse, drove me deeper into the labyrinthine ruin. Beneath a collapsed archway, where the stone glistened like the hide of some vast, slumbering beast, I found it, a tome. Its cover was bound in a leathery hide, warm to the touch, its surface etched with faint ridges that pulsed faintly beneath my fingers. It was no animal skin I could name, the texture was too smooth, too deliberate, as though crafted by hands that knew no earthly limits. The pages within were brittle, yellowed, and inscribed with glyphs that writhed and shifted when I tried to focus on them. They were not static, they danced, curling like tendrils of smoke, forming patterns that teased at meaning before dissolving into chaos. As I lifted the book, a whisper slithered into my mind, a voice ancient and vast, speaking in a tongue no human throat could shape. It was not a sound, but a sensation, a violation of thought that left me trembling. The descent. I returned to my room at the inn, the tome clutched to my chest like a guilty secret. The village seemed quieter now, the fog denser, the sea's roar more insistent. I lit a candle, its flame flickering as though reluctant to burn, and opened the book. Hours bled into days, time dissolving as I pored over the glyphs. Sleep became a stranger. My dreams, when they came, were feverish glimpses of endless voids and eyeless things that writhed in the dark. The tome consumed me, its secrets clawing at my mind, promising truths too vast for mortal comprehension. With each page, the whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices that spoke of eons before the stars, of entities that slumbered in the cracks between realities, of a cosmos indifferent to the fleeting spark of humanity. The village began to unravel. Shadows stretched and twisted along the walls, coiling into shapes that were neither animal nor man, impossible forms with too many angles, too many eyes. The sky pulsed with a sickly green aurora, its light casting the cliffs and sea in a feverish glow that burned the edges of my vision. From somewhere deep beneath the earth, guttural chants rose, their rhythm syncopated with the crash of waves, as though the sea itself were singing a hymn to something ancient and ravenous. The ground trembled with a wet, rhythmic thud, like the heartbeat of a colossus stirring in its prison. I saw them then, in fleeting glimpses that frayed my sanity further. Grotesque, tentacled forms slithered through the fog, their bodies shimmering with an oily sheen, their outlines blurring as though reality rejected their presence. They were never fully in view, always vanishing when I turned to face them, but their weight lingered in the air, a palpable malice that pressed against my chest, slowing my breath. The villagers, those who hadn't yet fled, wandered the streets in a daze. Their eyes were vacant, their mouths slack, and some muttered fragments of the alien tongue that now haunted my thoughts. One man, his face a mask of terror, grabbed my arm and hissed, "You've woken it, fool. It sees us now." But he fell silent, collapsing into sobs as the fog swallowed him. The stirring below. The tome's glyphs began to yield their meaning not in words, but in visions. My mind reeled with images of a universe unbound by time, of stars birthing horrors too vast to name, of a being bound beneath this cursed shore, its slumber disturbed by my meddling. It was no god in the human sense, no deity to be worshipped or appeased, just a presence, eternal and indifferent, its existence a mockery of all I held true. The air grew thicker, the fog now a choking miasma laced with flecks of ash and the faint, metallic tang of blood. The sea churned violently, its waves clawing at the cliffs with a hunger that felt alive, and the rhythmic thudding grew louder, closer, shaking the ground until the inn's walls cracked and groaned. I tried to stop, to close the book and cast it away, but my hands betrayed me. They turned the pages with a will of their own, each glyph searing itself into my mind, each whisper weaving itself into my soul. The tentacled shapes grew bolder, lingering in the corners of my vision, their forms resolving into glimpses of segmented limbs and countless, unblinking eyes. The village crumbled, roofs caved in, walls split like rotten wood, and the streets flooded with seawater that pulsed with an unnatural warmth. The aurora above intensified, its purples and greens bleeding into one another, twisting into patterns that mirrored the tome's glyphs. The abyss revealed. I don't know how I reached the cliffs that final night. The tome was still in my hands, its cover now slick with something that wasn't water, its weight heavier than stone. The sea roared below, a cacophony of rage and hunger, and the fog parted for a single, terrible moment. I saw it then, a glimpse of something vast rising from the depths, a colossus of writhing tendrils and shimmering flesh, its countless eyes gleaming with a cold, eternal malice that pierced my soul. It was not the creature itself, I knew, just a fragment, a shadow cast across the veil of reality. But it was enough. The realization broke me. Humanity was nothing, a fleeting thought in the dreams of beings so vast they defied comprehension. Our cities, our hopes, our fears were but motes of dust, unnoticed and uncared for in the face of the cosmos's infinite indifference. The tome slipped from my fingers, sinking into the frothing sea, but its whispers lingered, now a part of me. The village was gone, swallowed by the tide, and the sky bled colors no eye should see. The rhythmic thudding was deafening now, a pulse that shook my bones, and I felt the entity's gaze upon me, not with anger or intent, but with the casual curiosity of a god inspecting a speck. I stepped forward, the cliff's edge crumbling beneath my feet. There was no fear left in me, only a hollow acceptance. Madness had burned away all else, leaving a clarity too terrible to bear. The sea rose to meet me, its waves warm and alive, and I welcomed it. The abyss gazed back, and I was no more. Somewhere, in the depths where no light dares linger, the tome waits. Its whispers will find another, and the cycle will begin anew. For we are but transient sparks, doomed to flicker and fade in the shadow of truths too vast to endure.